They laughed at her, called her barren, and whispered that she would never bear a child. Each whisper cuts deeper than any slap, each snare sharper than knives. But the truth they were about to discover would expose a secret that would leave them utterly speechless. Many years ago, in a quiet village by the river, there lived a very beautiful woman named Naomi. To most, she was just an ordinary, almost invincible woman. But those who looked closely could see a quiet strength in her eyes, a resilience shaped by years of sadness. Naomi lived in her husband's family compound, a sprawling house of clay walls, wooden beams, and red tiled roofs. The compound hummed with life every morning. Roosters crowed, children ran barefoot across the yard, and women's voices carried through open windows as they cooked and laughed. But Naomi's presence barely made a sound. She moved like a shadow, waking up before everyone, sweeping quietly, cooking quietly, speaking only when spoken to. Silence had become her shield, and endurance her only companion. Her husband, Aaron, was a gentleman, kind in ways few could see, but his eyes carried a quiet sorrow, the kind that comes from years of unspoken grief. He had watched other men raise children on their shoulders, and though he loved Naomi, he too had grown tired of questions from relatives, of his mother's sighs, of the weight of expectations. Even within the bustling house, whispers followed Naomi like shadows. Woman, even goats give birth, her sister-in-law once said, pounding pepper with a laugh that cut sharper than any knife. I don't even know why my brother has refused to send you back to your father's house. She continued. Naomi sat on a bench outside her hut, her head bowed as she tried to hide the tears that had gathered in her eyes. She wished the ground would just open and swallow her, so she would be free from this mockery which had become part of her daily life. But the sister-in-law was not the only one who made her life miserable. The other day, as Naomi stepped into the women's meeting hall, someone whispered, was she not told that this meeting was for mothers? Another voice followed. Oh, poor Naomi. Naomi froze. Her fingers tightened around her wrapper. Her breath paused. Tears rushed to her eyes, but she did not wipe them away. For a moment, she stood there, unsure which way was out. Then, she turned and ran away. At night, when the compound slept, she knelt beside her mat and prayed words that tasted like dust. God, remember me. God, touch me. God, don't let me die empty. And so, the quiet woman who seemed invincible to everyone, held a heart that endured, a spirit that waited, and a story that no one yet knew. Weeks passed quietly in the compound. Naomi moved like a shadow, her hands busy with chores, her eyes lowered whenever the family gathered. The villagers called her Barren. The whispers never ceased, but she had learned to vanish into silence. One afternoon, the elders called Aaron for a family meeting. Naomi stood just outside the hut, listening. The low hum of voices carried through the door. "She is a good woman," one uncle said, his voice steady. "But goodness doesn't continue a lineage," another replied. His mother spoke last, her words slicing the air like a knife. "Our son needs an heir." Naomi's heart clenched. She already knew what would come next. That evening, Aaron did not look at her when he spoke. His voice was calm, almost weary. "They say I should take a second wife," he said softly. "Just for children. You will still be the first wife." The words entered her ears like cold water, but they did not settle. Second wife? Naomi's lips curved into a small, almost imperceptible smile. "If that will give you peace," she said quietly. Her heart cracked silently. When Priscilla arrived, the compound transformed. She was young, full-chested, and hopeful, the kind of presence that demanded attention. Laughter returned, visitors multiplied, and everyone's eyes followed her like a moving calendar, counting her days and her growth. Naomi became invincible once again. She cooked for Priscilla, washed her clothes, and tended to her quietly, without complaints. And all the while, she carried the weight of her own despair in silence. When Priscilla announced she was pregnant, the compound erupted in joy. Naomi slipped away unnoticed, retreating to the backyard, sitting on bare earth until nightfall. Her hands were busy, but her heart ached. And yet, she endured because Naomi had learned that patience was stronger than the loudest laughter, and silence sometimes spoke louder than any protest. Then the first child came, a boy. Aaron carried him proudly through the compound, his chest swelling with joy. His mother danced and clapped her hands, her voice echoing, "Now my son is complete." Naomi smiled quietly until her cheeks ached from forcing the expression. She watched the celebrations, the pride, the whispers of admiration. But inside, something felt uneasy. Soon, the unease became worry. The boy fell sick often. Fevers came and went. Doctors were summoned. Prayers were made. Yet, nothing worked. Whispers began creeping through the compound. "Maybe this house is cursed. Maybe the first wife is the problem. Naomi overheard Priscilla one night, her voice raw with despair. "She is the reason my children are dying," she sobbed to Aaron. "Send her away." Naomi's chest tightened. She held her breath as if even breathing might shatter her. Aaron said nothing. His silence was a storm in itself, louder than thunder, heavier than words. Then, one day, Aaron fell ill. It began quietly, a cough that lingered longer than it should, a weakness that settled into his bones. Weeks later, Priscilla returned to her father's house, whispers following her like vultures circling a dying fire. "She doesn't want to be a widow," people said, shaking their heads. But Naomi stayed. She fed Aaron his medicine. She cleaned his body. She slept on the floor beside his bed, her hair brushing the dirt-smeared floor, her hands steady despite the storm in her chest. One night, when Aaron's breathing grew shallow, he reached for her wrist. His fingers trembled, his eyes heavy with shame. "There is something you must know," he whispered. Naomi leaned closer, her heart thudding in her chest. "The doctor said the problem was not you," he said, his voice barely audible. "It was me." Naomi froze. Her breath paused. "I was ashamed," he admitted, tears slipping down his face. "I let them blame you. I let them hurt you." Her chest burned. Pain, sorrow, and long-held endurance collided inside her. "Forgive me," he begged. Naomi pressed his hand to her face. Her voice was steady, calm, and unshakable. "I forgave you long ago." Before sunrise, Aaron was gone. And with his death, Naomi lost her last protection, the only shield she had ever known. The mourning period weighed on Naomi like a mountain. Tax doubled. Whispers filled the corner of the compound, as sharp as thorns. One afternoon, her mother-in-law confronted her, her voice cold and sharp. "You will leave this house after the burial. You have no child here." Naomi nodded quietly. She did not argue. Weeks after the burial, the compound was filled again. This time, not with mourning, but curiosity. They gathered in the sitting room, shoulder to shoulder. Some stood, some leaned against the walls. Naomi stood at the far corner, barefoot, hands folded, eyes lowered, just as she had learned to do all her life. The lawyer adjusted his glasses and cleared his throat. The room went quiet. "To my wife, Naomi," he began, "I leave the house in the city, the land behind the river, and all funds held in my personal savings account. She will also oversee the foundation I established for orphan children, which I funded quietly over the years." For a split second, the room froze. Then, laughter burst from the mother-in-law's lips. sharp, cruel, slicing through the silence like stabbing knives. Which child will inherit it for her? She sneered loudly. This woman has no womb. She is as barren as the Sahara. Oga lawyer, check well. There must be a mix-up somewhere. Some people laughed nervously. Others avoided Naomi's eyes. The lawyer paused. He cleared his throat again, adjusting his glasses, as though the weight of the room might crush him. Then he continued, I am aware my family will question why everything was left to my wife. He read slowly. The truth is this. Everything we own belongs to Naomi. The properties were purchased in my name only to honor me as her husband. The room stiffened, and I want it known clearly and publicly that I am the reason Naomi never bore a child. Gasps exploded across the room. I was medically incapable, the lawyer continued, his voice firm. My medical report is attached to this will as evidence. I allowed my wife to suffer shame for my silence. For that, I carry my regrets to the grave. The room shattered into stunned silence. Every eye turned to Naomi. Tears streamed down her cheeks. Not tears of shame, but of release. Of the truth finally being exposed. Priscilla lowered her head, her shoulders collapsing under the weight of understanding. No words were spoken as she was quietly asked to leave. Silence followed her like a shadow. One by one, the family turned to Naomi. Voices trembled. Some knelt, some begged. We were blind. We mistreated you. We were wrong. Naomi looked at them calmly. Her voice was soft, but unbreakable. I forgave you long ago, she said, but my destiny is not here. She stepped out of the compound. Children gathered around her. Women watched with reverence. Those who once mocked her stood frozen, unable to speak. And as Naomi walked away, the truth became clear. Those who laughed at her, called her barren, and said that she would never bear a child, have now been put to shame. This is a reminder that true worth is not defined by societal expectations. Naomi was judged and humiliated for being barren, yet her value was not in her ability to have children, but in her integrity, patience, and quiet acts of generosity. The story reminds us that when we judge others, we often miss the deeper essence of the person. Secondly, forgiveness is powerful. Naomi forgave her husband for his silence and his family despite their cruelty to her. This underscores the emotional strength and peace that comes from letting go of bitterness. Thank you for watching. Please like, share, subscribe for more, and stay tuned for the next one.